You're a thief
Clearwater,
and a liar, but
Wyoming,
you're not going to get away with it.
1885. July sun scorched the
I
dirt
didn't
streets
steal
without
anything.
mercy as Sarah Winters hung from a thick oak post in the center of town. Her white dress, once Sunday proper, now hung in tatters from her bruised frame. Blood had dried in rivulets down her face, mixing with sweat and tears long since spent. The iron chains clinked softly as her body struggled for each shallow breath. A wooden sign hung around her neck. One word carved deep: thief. No one looked her in the eye. Not the saloon keeper who watered down whiskey for profit. Not the preacher who spoke of mercy every Sunday. Not the women who pulled their children closer as they hurried past. They all saw her hanging there, and every damn one turned away. Some out of fear, most out of convenience. The thunder of hoofbeats broke the afternoon silence. A lone rider approached from the east, his silhouette wavering in the heat mirage rising from the parched earth. Wyatt Blackwood hadn't been seen in Clearwater since they buried his daughter Anna, 9 summers ago. 9 years since he'd walked away from the badge, from law and order, from fighting a system too corrupt to fix. But now he was back. The worn leather duster hung from his broad shoulders like armor. His weathered Stetson pulled low against the sun. The Colt single-action army, legendary for dropping 7 Confederate soldiers at Shiloh before he turned 25, rested in its holster, worn smooth from years of use. But his eyes had changed. Harder now, colder. The jagged scar that ran from temple to jaw hadn't been there before. Neither had the gray streaking his once black beard. He rode straight past the general store, past the saloon with its piano music spilling into the street. Didn't stop until his chestnut stallion stood 10 feet from her. Dismounting with the fluid grace of a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle, he approached slowly. Some brave soul had left a tin cup of water on the ground near her feet. It sat untouched, baking in the sun. Wyatt's hand moved toward his belt, and every man watching tensed. But instead of his gun, he drew a hunting knife with a bone handle. The blade glinted in the sunlight as he reached up and sliced through the ropes, binding her to the post. Her body crumpled forward. He caught her before she hit the dirt, light as kindling, like she hadn't eaten in days. That's when he saw it, a small wooden cross hanging from a leather cord around her neck, hand-carved with the initials ABR burned into the center. Anna Blackwood, the cross he'd carved for his daughter's 16th birthday, the one she'd been wearing when they found her body at the bottom of Widow's Ridge. Sarah's eyes fluttered open, blue as cornflowers, sharp with pain, but clear with purpose. Her cracked lips barely moved. They all watched me die, just like they watched Anna. Behind them, the saloon doors swung open. The metallic sound of a shotgun being racked echoed down the street. Wyatt didn't turn, didn't even flinch, just wrapped his duster around the girl's shoulders and lifted her onto his horse. As he mounted behind her, he finally faced the town that had once been his to protect. No words, just a look that promised reckoning. Then he noticed something, a dark stain spreading across his sleeve where he'd held her. Blood, fresh. He pulled back the duster just enough to see the bullet wound in her side. This wasn't punishment for theft. This was attempted murder, covered up in public spectacle. They rode out of town the same way he'd come in, unhurried but purposeful. No one raised a hand to stop them. That's what guilt looks like when it hides behind closed curtains and whispered rumors. Wyatt's cabin sat beyond Broken Pine Ridge, near a creek that had dried up years ago. The ride felt longer than it was, with Sarah's breathing growing shallower with each passing mile. When they arrived, he didn't rush her inside, set her down gently on the porch back against a post, like a wounded animal you didn't want to spook. He tended her wound with hands that had patched bullet holes in men from Tennessee to Kansas. The bullet had gone clean through, small caliber, probably a .32. Missing anything vital by the grace of God, or luck, or whatever the hell still watched over this forsaken territory. You got a name? He finally asked, his voice rough from disuse. Sarah, she whispered. Sarah Winters. She reached for the cross at her neck. You're Wyatt Blackwood, Anna's father. He nodded once, not asking how she knew. Not yet. I'm a reporter for the Denver Chronicle, she continued, stronger now. I've been investigating the Hayes family and the deaths connected to their silver mine. She paused, wincing as she shifted position. Including your daughters. Wyatt's jaw tightened. 9 years hadn't dulled that pain, just buried it deeper, like a bullet too close to the heart to dig out. He walked to the water pump, worked the handle until rusty water turned clear. When he returned, Sarah was examining his cabin with the sharp eyes of someone trained to notice details. They said you were the best lawman this county ever had, she said. Then you just disappeared after Anna died. Wyatt set the water down beside her. Disappeared is a polite way of putting it. He glanced toward town. After I buried my girl, I spent 6 months hunting for whoever pushed her off that ridge. Sheriff, judge, even the territorial marshal. Not one of them would help. Said it was an accident. Case closed. But you didn't believe that. No. He stood, walked to the window, scanned the horizon out of habit. 17-year-old girl who could ride better than most men doesn't just fall from a horse. Not Anna. He turned back to Sarah. But then one night, Sheriff Mills, man who hired me as deputy, turned up dead. Suicide, here they said. Next morning, I found a note nailed to my door. Said I'd join him if I didn't leave town by sundown. And you left. The look Wyatt gave her would have wilted a lesser woman. I left so I could come back. On my terms, when they weren't watching. Before Sarah could respond, dust clouds appeared on the horizon. 3 riders coming fast. Wyatt moved with surprising speed for a man his size. He pulled a worn carpet aside, revealing a trap door. From inside, he retrieved a Winchester Model 1873 rifle. Checked the action with practiced hands. 16 rounds in the tube. Full box of ammunition in his pocket. Can you shoot? He asked. Sarah nodded. My father taught me. He handed her a Remington Model 1858 revolver from his belt. 6 shots. Make them count. The riders pulled up short of the cabin. Sheriff Frank Miller and 2 men Wyatt didn't recognize. Hard men with the look of hired guns. Their horses were lathered, pushed too hard in the afternoon heat. That's far enough, Wyatt called from the porch, rifle resting casually in the crook of his arm. Miller spat tobacco juice into the dirt. You're harboring a fugitive, Blackwood. That girl's wanted for murder. Murder? Sarah's voice rose behind him. Whose murder? Jacob Simmons. Found him with his throat cut behind the assayer's office. Miller's eyes narrowed. Right after he was seen talking to you. That's a lie. Sarah's hand tightened on the revolver. Jacob was my source. He was going to testify about what he saw at the mine. Miller dismounted, his boots kicking up dust as he stepped forward. One of his companions, a rail-thin man with a pock-marked face, reached for his gun. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion to anyone watching. Wyatt moved like lightning that strikes before you hear the thunder. The rifle butt connected with Pockmark's jaw, shattering bone. As the man crumpled, Wyatt's elbow drove backward into the second gunman's throat, a sickening crunch followed by desperate gasping. Miller managed to clear leather before Wyatt's boot connected with his knee. The crack echoed across the yard as the sheriff went down, his unfired pistol spinning in the dirt. 3 men, 30 seconds. Not a shot fired. Wyatt kicked Miller's gun away, then knelt beside him. His voice dropped low, meant only for the sheriff's ears. Now you listen close. That girl wasn't stealing anything. Someone put a bullet in her and strung her up to die in plain sight. I'm betting it's the same someone who killed Simmons to keep him quiet. He leaned closer. The same someone who pays your salary beyond what a sheriff in a town this size could earn honest. Miller's eyes darted to his fallen companions, then back to Wyatt. Blood trickled from his split lip. Hayes doesn't just control the silver mine, he whispered. He controls the graves of anyone who can't keep their mouth shut. By nightfall, word had spread through Clearwater that Wyatt Blackwood had returned. In the mayor's office above the bank, Victor Hayes swirled brandy in a crystal glass imported from St. Louis. At 60, Hayes retained the rigid posture of his Confederate officer days. Silver hair swept back from a high forehead, eyes cold as river stones in January. "I want them both dead by morning," he said, not looking at the four men standing before his desk. "The girl first. Make Blackwood watch. Then take your time with him." His son Nathan lounged against the doorframe, a silver-plated pistol spinning lazily around his finger. At 25, he had his father's height but none of his discipline. A dangerous combination. "I should have put another bullet in that bitch when I had the chance," Nathan muttered. "Thought she'd bleed out before anyone found her." Hayes silenced his son with a look. "Your impulsiveness is what brought Blackwood back to our doorstep. I told you to be discreet." Nathan's face darkened. She was asking questions about the mine, about the shipments, just like his daughter was. The older Hayes set his glass down carefully. "Then perhaps it's time we close the mine to visitors. Permanently." He turned to the men. "After you deal with Blackwood and the girl, burn every document in the lower shaft, every ledger, every map, everything." As the men filed out, Hayes called his son back. "Nathan, this is your mess. I expect you to clean it up. Personally." The younger Hayes smiled, patting the silver pistol at his hip. "With pleasure, Father." Dawn broke over the eastern ridge as Wyatt and Sarah approached the abandoned church on the outskirts of town. The building listed slightly to one side, its steeple long since toppled by lightning or neglect. Inside, dust motes danced in the shafts of morning light filtering through broken windows. Pews lay scattered like fallen soldiers. At the altar, a man worked a forge, the rhythmic clanging of hammer on metal echoing through the empty space. Marcus Freeman looked up as they entered. 6'4" of solid muscle, hands like anvils, eyes that had seen mankind at its worst and somehow retained their humanity. The former slave had followed Wyatt to Clearwater after the war, setting up the town's first blacksmith shop. "Knew you'd come back someday," Marcus said, setting aside his hammer. "Just didn't figure it'd take 9 years." "Had some growing up to do," Wyatt replied. Marcus's gaze shifted to Sarah, noting her pallor and the careful way she held herself. "She needs a doctor. She needs the truth," Wyatt countered. "About Anna, about the Hayes mine, about what this town's been burying." Marcus wiped his hands on his leather apron. "Truth's been in short supply around here since you left." He walked to a loose floorboard beneath the pulpit, pried it up with practiced ease. From inside, he withdrew a small package wrapped in oilcloth. "Anna gave me this the day before she died, made me promise not to tell anyone but you." He handed it to Wyatt. "Then she went missing, and you were gone before I could—" Wyatt unwrapped the package. Inside lay a torn page from a journal, with a crude map drawn in a young girl's hand. X marks and notations indicated shaft entrances and guard postings. In the corner, she'd written, "Guns, hundreds of them, hidden in the east tunnel." Sarah leaned forward, eyes widening. "Hayes is running guns through the silver mine," she whispered. "That's what Jacob was trying to tell me." "He's supplying renegade bands along the border," Marcus confirmed. "Mexican revolutionaries, outlaws, anyone with coin. Been doing it for years." "And Anna found out." Wyatt's voice had gone deadly quiet. Marcus nodded. "She was always riding up near the mine. Must have seen something she wasn't supposed to." "Or someone," Sarah interjected. "Nathan Hayes has a reputation with young women. 3 girls have gone missing in the last 2 years, all last seen in his company." The pieces fell into place like bullets being loaded into a chamber. Wyatt felt cold fury building inside him. Not the hot rage of 9 years ago, but something more dangerous, more focused. "Tonight," he said finally, "we go into the mine tonight." The eastern shaft of the Hayes Silver Mine lay half a mile from the main entrance, hidden behind a stand of scrub pine. No guards patrolled its exterior. No need when most folks believed it had been sealed after a cave-in 3 years prior. Wyatt led the way, moving like a shadow despite his size. The skills that had kept him alive through war and wilderness hadn't dulled with age. Behind him, Sarah moved with surprising stealth for a city woman. Marcus brought up the rear, a Spencer repeating rifle cradled in his massive arms. The shaft entrance was blocked by boards that gave way easily, meant to appear sealed rather than actually being so. Beyond, darkness swallowed the narrow tunnel, broken only by the faint glow of their hooded lantern. "Stay close," Wyatt whispered. "Step where I step." The tunnel widened after 50 yards, opening into a large chamber carved from the living rock. What they found inside stole the breath from their lungs. Crates stacked 10 feet high, hundreds of them, each stamped with military markings: Springfield rifles, Colt revolvers, even Gatling guns. Enough firepower to start a small war or finish a big one. Sarah moved to a table against the far wall, where ledgers lay open beside a kerosene lamp. Her fingers traced down columns of figures and names. "My God," she whispered, "they're not just selling guns, they're selling information. Troop movements, railroad shipments, government treaties." She looked up, face pale in the lantern light. "Hayes is playing both sides of the border, selling American guns to Mexican rebels, then selling their attack plans back to the Army." Wyatt was examining another document when the first shot rang out. The bullet splintered the wooden crate beside his head, sending wooden shards flying. He dove for cover, dragging Sarah down as more shots erupted from the tunnel entrance. "Get to the back exit," Marcus shouted, returning fire with the Spencer. The big rifle roared in the confined space, drowning out the smaller caliber weapons firing at them. Wyatt pushed Sarah toward a narrow fissure in the rock wall. "Go! I'll cover you!" The Winchester came up smooth as silk, its action working flawlessly as he fired into the darkness. One shot, two, three. A scream told him at least one found its mark. Marcus backed toward them, still firing. "There's too many." "How many rounds you got left?" Wyatt called. "3 in the gun, maybe 10 in my pocket." Wyatt checked his own. 4 in the rifle, 6 in the Colt. Not enough. Then he saw them. Wooden crates stamped "Danger Blasting Powder." A plan formed in his mind, desperate but possible. "Get Sarah out through the back," he told Marcus. "I'll be right behind you." As they retreated, Wyatt smashed the kerosene lamp against the dynamite crates, then fired one last shot into the spreading pool of fuel. The flame caught instantly. He didn't wait to watch. Running full tilt, he dove through the fissure just as the first explosion rocked the chamber. The force threw him forward into darkness as the mine collapsed behind them. They emerged 2 miles away, where the old mine shaft opened onto a steep ravine. Smoke rose in the distance, and men's shouts carried on the night air. The explosion had been heard all the way to town. Sarah's wound had reopened during their escape. She leaned heavily against Marcus as they made their way toward the church. "We have to get the evidence to Denver," she gasped. "The ledgers." "You need a doctor first," Wyatt said. Then, seeing her expression, "I memorized the names, dates, enough to hang Hayes twice over." As they approached the church, something felt wrong. Wyatt held up his hand, signaling them to stop. That's when he saw it, a thin trail of smoke rising from the broken steeple. The church was burning. From the shadows, riders emerged. 6, no, 8 men, Hayes's men. Among them, Nathan Hayes sat astride a black stallion, his silver pistol gleaming in the moonlight. "Figured you'd come back here," Nathan called. "Predictable, Blackwood, just like your daughter." Wyatt's hand moved toward his Colt, But Marcus gripped his arm. They were outnumbered, outgunned. "Your father send you to do his dirty work?" Wyatt asked, playing for time, eyes scanning for any advantage. Nathan laughed. "Father doesn't know I'm here. This is personal." He gestured toward Sarah. "She's been asking too many questions, just like Anna did." The confession hung in the air between them. 9 years of suspicion crystallized into certainty. "You killed my daughter." Wyatt's voice was steel wrapped in ice. Nathan's smile widened. "She wouldn't give me what I wanted. Then she threatened to tell everyone about what she saw at the mine." He raised his silver pistol, pointing it directly at Wyatt's heart. "She fell from that ridge screaming your name, lawman. I made sure of it." Something broke inside Wyatt, a dam that had held back 9 years of grief and rage. His hand dropped to his Colt, muscles tense for the draw that would end either his life or Nathan's. Gunfire erupted, but not from Wyatt or Nathan. From the tree line behind them, a volley of shots took down 2 of Hayes's men, then another. Chaos erupted as riders appeared from the darkness. Townsfolk, at least a dozen of them, led by Sheriff Miller himself. "Run!" Marcus shouted, pushing Sarah toward the cover of trees. Wyatt stood his ground as bullets whizzed past, his eyes locked with Nathan's across the distance. A promise, a reckoning postponed, not prevented. Then he turned and ran, disappearing into the night as Clearwater erupted into open war behind him. Dawn found them at Marcus's sister's cabin, 10 miles outside town. Sarah lay on a cot, her wound properly dressed by the woman who'd once served as the county's midwife. Sheriff Miller sat at the rough-hewn table, hat in hands, shame written across his features. "Hayes killed my wife," he said quietly. 3 years ago. Made it look like fever, but I knew. She'd found letters, proof of his dealings with the Mexican gangs." He looked up at Wyatt. "I've been gathering evidence ever since, waiting for the right moment." "And you think that moment is now?" Wyatt's voice carried no forgiveness. Miller nodded. "Half the town's ready to stand against him. After last night, they know the truth about the mine, about the guns, about everything." "Not everything," Sarah said from her cot. "They don't know about Anna yet, or the other girls." Wyatt stared out the window toward the distant smudge of smoke that marked Clearwater. "They will." By midday, they rode into town, Wyatt, Marcus, Miller, and 12 men from outlying farms. Sarah had stayed behind, too weak to ride but determined to finish her story for the Chronicle. The town square stood empty as they approached, but curtains twitched in windows. Eyes watched, ears listened. Mayor Hayes stood on the steps of the courthouse, immaculate in a black suit despite the heat. Flanked by 4 armed men, he projected calm authority, the consummate politician even now. "Sheriff Miller," he called, voice carrying across the square. "I see you've brought Mr. Blackwood back to answer for his crimes. The explosion at my mine killed 3 of my best men." "Your mine harbors more than silver," Wyatt replied, his voice pitched to carry to every listening ear. "We found your guns, your ledgers, your dealings with enemies of this country." Hayes's expression never wavered. "Baseless accusations from a grieving father who abandoned his post. Who'll believe you over me?" "They'll believe this." Wyatt held up a leather-bound journal. Anna's journal. The one Marcus had kept hidden all these years. For the first time, Hayes looked uncertain. "Your son murdered my daughter," Wyatt continued, each word a bullet aimed at Hayes's carefully constructed empire. "She saw what you were hiding in that mine. She wrote it all down. Names, dates, everything." Movement caught Wyatt's eye. Nathan Hayes appeared on the balcony of the hotel across the square, rifle in hand, aimed directly at Wyatt's chest. What happened next would be retold in Clearwater for generations. As Nathan's finger tightened on the trigger, a shot rang out. Not from Nathan's rifle, but from the general store. Nathan jerked backward, clutching his shoulder, the rifle tumbling to the street below. In the stunned silence that followed, an elderly woman stepped from the store's shadow. Mrs. Abernathy, the shopkeeper's widow. 70 years old if a day, holding a smoking shotgun with unwavering hands. "I saw you push that girl off the ridge," she called to Nathan, her voice steady despite her years. "I was picking berries on the north slope. Saw the whole thing. Been carrying that sin of silence ever since." Her confession broke the dam. One by one, townspeople emerged. The blacksmith, the barber, the school teacher, each with their own piece of the truth they'd been too afraid to speak. Hayes looked around wildly, watching his kingdom crumble. With desperate speed, he drew a derringer from his vest pocket, aiming not at Wyatt, but at Miller. 3 shots rang out as one. Hayes staggered, red blooming across his white shirt. 1 bullet from Wyatt's Colt, 1 from Miller's revolver, 1 from Marcus's rifle. He fell forward, dead before he hit the dirt. On the hotel balcony, Nathan Hayes clutched his wounded shoulder, looking down at his father's body, then at the town that had finally found its courage. His face contorted with rage as he raised his hands in surrender. "It was him," Nathan shouted, pointing at his father's corpse. "It was all him. The guns, the killings. I just did what he told me." No one believed him. Not anymore. But Nathan Hayes wouldn't face the hangman's noose. As 2 deputies moved to take him into custody, he broke free, shoving one man over the balcony railing. In the confusion, he disappeared through the hotel's back door. Wyatt saw it happen. Without hesitation, he sprinted across the square, vaulting over Hayes's corpse, and crashed through the hotel's front doors. The lobby was empty, piano silent, glasses abandoned on tables. He heard boots pounding up the back stairs. Drawing his Colt, Wyatt took the stairs 3 at a time. At the top landing, a flash of movement caught his eye. Nathan, limping down the hallway, leaving a trail of blood from his wounded shoulder. "Hayes!" Wyatt's voice thundered through the corridor. "There's nowhere to run!" Nathan spun, firing wildly with his silver pistol. Bullets splintered the wooden banister beside Wyatt's head. Return fire from Wyatt's Colt caught Nathan in the leg, sending him crashing through a door onto the hotel roof. Outside, the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly as Wyatt followed. Gun trained on the younger man. Nathan crawled backward toward the edge of the roof, leaving a crimson smear across the hot tar. "You're done, Hayes," Wyatt said, advancing slowly. "It's over." Below, townspeople gathered, looking up at the confrontation unfolding above them. Nathan glanced down, then back at Wyatt, calculation in his eyes. "She begged for her life, you know," he spat, blood bubbling at the corner of his mouth. "Your precious Anna cried for her daddy to save her." Wyatt's finger tightened on the trigger. 9 years of vengeance, a heartbeat away from fulfillment. "Do it," Nathan taunted. "Show them all you're no better than me." For a moment that stretched like eternity, Wyatt stood frozen. Then slowly he lowered his gun. "No," he said quietly, "I'm nothing like you. Anna wouldn't want this." Nathan's face twisted in fury. With unexpected speed, he lunged for Wyatt, a hidden knife flashing in the sunlight. Wyatt sidestepped, grabbing Nathan's wrist. They struggled at the roof's edge, boots slipping on blood-slicked tar. The knife clattered away. Nathan's eyes widened as he lost his footing, teetering on the brink. Wyatt grabbed for him, instinct overriding revenge, but caught only empty air as Nathan Hayes plummeted 3 stories to the street below. Justice, it seemed, had its own plans. 1 week later, Wyatt stood at Anna's grave, the first time he'd visited since they laid her to rest 9 years earlier. The wooden cross he'd carved had weathered, but the name remained clear. He placed a fresh-cut wildflower beside it. "It's done," he said simply. "Both of them are gone now. You can rest easy." Sarah stood a respectful distance away, notebook closed for once. Her story had made the front page of the Chronicle, the first of many about Hayes' criminal empire and the town that finally stood against it. The wound in her side was healing clean, much like the town itself. "What will you do now?" she asked as he returned to her side. Wyatt looked toward the mountains, their peaks still capped with snow even in summer. "Don't know. Haven't thought beyond this day for 9 years. Clearwater needs a sheriff," she suggested. "A real one." He shook his head. "That badge belongs to someone else now." They walked back toward town in comfortable silence. As they crested the ridge, Wyatt paused, looking down at the cabin near the dried creek bed. Something caught his eye, a glint of sunlight on water. For the first time in nearly a decade, a steady stream flowed where dust had rained, carving a silver path through the parched earth. "Sometimes I wonder if folks like us ever get to write our own endings," Sarah said, following his gaze. Wyatt considered this, his weathered face thoughtful. "Maybe we don't get to write the beginning," he said finally, "but we sure as hell get to decide the last page." As they continued down the path, Wyatt felt something he hadn't experienced in 9 long years. Not happiness, that would take more time, but purpose, direction. The weight of Anna's death would always be with him, but it no longer bent his shoulders. Back at his cabin, Wyatt placed Anna's journal and his old sheriff's badge in a wooden box. He ran his fingers over the tarnished star one last time before closing the lid. 9 years of grief finally laid to rest alongside the truth. From the shelf above his bed, he took down his Colt. With practiced hands, he field-stripped the weapon, each component familiar as his own heartbeat. He cleaned each part methodically, oiled the action, then reassembled it with the precision that had kept him alive through war and wilderness. 6 fresh cartridges slid into the cylinder, the metallic clicks echoing in the quiet cabin. Outside, the creek that had been dry for so long now ran clear and strong, its gentle murmur a constant reminder that even the most barren places could find renewal. Sarah's words echoed in his mind. Folks like us. She'd understood something about him that few ever had, that justice wasn't just a job he'd once held, but a calling etched into his very bones. Wyatt stepped onto the porch, holstering his cleaned gun. The setting sun painted the western sky in shades of fire, promising another day to come. To the east, the silhouette of a rider appeared on the horizon, making his way slowly toward the cabin. Sheriff Miller, likely coming to make one more plea for Wyatt to take up the badge again. But Wyatt had found a different path forward. Justice in Clearwater had been served. But across the vast Wyoming territory, other towns suffered under the boots of men like Hayes. Other daughters needed avenging. Other wrongs needed righting. "You can't save everyone," Anna had once told him, wise beyond her years. "No," he'd replied, "but that's no reason not to try." Wyatt Blackwood straightened his hat and stepped off the porch to meet the approaching rider. The horizon stretched before him, vast and unwritten. The last page hadn't been decided yet after all.